Hi everybody, my name is Sarah Lawton. I'm the new CEO of the Landscape Research Group. Welcome to this research funding showcase. I'm going to provide a very short introduction to LRG. It has been pre-recorded, but then I will hand over to Dr. Merham Kellig. She will be leading today's session. Then we'll have the presentations and questions. So bear with me as I share my screen. The Landscape Research Group is an international, independent and not-for-profit organisation. We connect academics, practitioners and organisations working across landscape, often across disciplines, geographies and sectors. Our role is to support research, enable exchange and create opportunities for collaboration. We do this through publications, networks, events and research funding. One of LRG's core activities is the Landscape Research Journal. This is an international, peer-reviewed journal publishing original research that advances understanding of landscape across disciplines and contexts. It provides a platform for rigorous research and plays a central role in connecting the global landscape research community. Alongside the journal, we also run LEX, the Landscape Research Exchange. LEX is an informal, open-access, multimedia platform for sharing landscape research and ideas. It supports a broader range of voices and formats, including project work, reflections and multimedia content, providing a more accessible space for sharing research. Beyond publishing, a key part of LRG's work is connecting people. LRG networks are open, evolving groups that bring together researchers and practitioners across different regions, languages and thematic areas. They provide space for discussion, collaboration and the development of new ideas and initiatives. Networks are open to all and often provide a first point of engagement with LRG. Building on these connections, LRG also offers a small-scale research funding programme. The LRG Research Fund supports innovative landscape research projects, often at an early or exploratory stage. It is designed to enable new ideas, collaborations and approaches, particularly where larger funding may not yet be accessible. Membership brings all these elements together. It supports individuals and organisations to engage more deeply with LRG while helping to sustain the organisation's work. Membership provides access to the Landscape Research Journal, opportunities to shape and contribute to activities, and connection to an international research community. For those who want to move beyond attending into contributing, collaborating, or even convening, membership provides that pathway. To find out more about LRG, including our networks, publications and activities, please visit our website. I'm now pleased to introduce Merham, who will be chairing this session and guiding us through the discussion. Dr. Merham Kellig is Associate Editor and Lecturer in Urban Design and Planning at Ain Shams University. She contributes to research development and supports the LRG funding programme. Thank goodness, we are delighted about that. I'm going to pass you to Merham now. I do hope you enjoy this session. Welcome to LRG.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Merham Kellig, and I'm the LRG Research Coordinator and also the Associate Editor for the Landscape Research Journal, our flagship journal for the group. And beyond this, I'm Assistant Professor at Ain Shams University in Cairo, Egypt, at the Urban Design and Planning Department. So first, I would like to welcome you all. I'm thrilled to have you join us today as we celebrate the work of a group of wonderful scholars who are advancing landscape research in different parts of the world. First, I would like to briefly introduce the LRG Research Funds. We launched this funding scheme in 2017, and since then we have supported more than 30 research projects across 15 countries, exploring landscapes in diverse cultural and environmental contexts. This program stems from our belief that research has a vital role to play in shaping a fairer, more ethical, and more sustainable future. Our aim is to support high-quality, independent seed research projects that align strongly with LRG's strategic priorities. We particularly encourage applications from early career researchers and practitioners working across all fields of landscape research, especially projects that foster collaboration, exchange, and community engagement. Our theme for this year is Reimagining Landscape Change, Methods and Tools for a Transforming World. The call for applications is currently open and will close in mid-May. So we warmly encourage you to apply if your work aligns with this year's theme and our broader goals. Please visit our website for more information. And now back to our wonderful guests for today. We will hear from three outstanding research teams who were recipients of the 2024 LRG funds. For this year, the theme was Climate Communities, People and Landscape in an Age of Change. Through very different lenses and in diverse regions of the world, each project explored how communities are experiencing and responding to climate change. After the presentations, we'll open the floor for discussion and audience questions. So please feel free to share your thoughts and questions in the chat box or verbally during the discussion session. Today, we're delighted to have with us Bethany Copsey, Dan Carlson, and Tracy Valcourt. Welcome and thank you all for being here. Each of them has done remarkable work, and it was my pleasure to accompany them throughout their work from start to finish. And I'm genuinely excited for them to take us through their research worlds today. We will begin with Bethany Copsey, whose research focuses on peatlands. Bethany, I would like to invite you to briefly introduce yourself and then share your work with us.
Hi everyone, my name is Bethany and I'm a member of the collective Repeat. And I'm going to share a little bit about Repeat and the project that we did as part of the Landscape Research Group's funding in 2024. And this was our project Mapping Value Peatlands as a Case Study. So first, just a little bit about Repeat. So we're a youth-led organization that's working to bring more awareness, appreciation, and action for peatlands. And we do that through various practical and playful activities, including workshops, exhibitions, and restoration camps. And one of the core ideas of the organization is that we treat peatlands as guides, as a microcosm that we can understand a lot of other phenomena or societal issues, including deep time, the human nature dichotomy, access to land, and the way that we understand and calculate the value of the living world. So in line with this idea, in this work that we do, we proposed this project Mapping Value to the LRG in 2024. And this project set out to understand how we express and understand the value of the natural world in ways that move beyond purely monetary or instrumental findings and framings. And we chose peatlands. I mean, we work a lot with peatlands, but we find that they're then specifically interesting for this type of work, sitting at this kind of nexus of climate, ecology, culture. So this ability to use them as a microcosm is a really useful framing for trying to understand value and how we can shift the way that we use certain terms and the value framings that we're using. So I'm going to run through the activities and the timeline of the project. This is just some photos of our previous work as an organization. So we started with this one pager, and the idea here was just to summarize a lot of the different value frameworks that do exist and create something that the Repeat team and the team working on this particular project could look back on to assess the value patterns that we were falling back into and how we can embed alternative ways of valuing the natural world around us. We created this comic, the A to Z of peatlands. So each letter of the alphabet provided a benefit or characteristic or feature of peatlands, which is valued by ourselves, by the planet, by the species themselves. And the idea then was that we created it in a small card deck that people could then take into the field with them, use as an icebreaker, or just as a way of kind of breaking out of regular ways that we may fall back onto into understanding peatlands. So during our research, we also created this comic here. During our research, we were very intrigued and kept coming back to the paper by Kate Flood, Mary Mahon, and John McDonough, which is assigning value to cultural ecosystem services, the significance of memory and imagination in the conservation of Irish peatlands. So this paper explores how value is assigned to cultural ecosystem services of peatlands and incorporates relational and pragmatist approaches to conceptualizing value. And the paper then proposes a framework for valuing the temporal dimensions of peatlands as a way of better capturing how this dynamic changes over time between people and peatlands, and then broader natural environments as well. So we created this comic in kind of response and in conversation with this paper, and it follows a recurring character that we have, Gob, as you see here, as they learn and reflect about the cultural connection to bogs in terms of their restoration and stewardship. So it's set at night and emphasizes the cultural connection between people, stars, and peatlands. And each star there was acting as a portal to remembering, reimagining, and restoring, which are all concepts that come up in the paper itself. And then we printed this, and again, it can be used as a way of people entering the space of assessing and reassessing, reimagining how we're valuing peatlands and which kind of and what emphasis we're putting on different aspects of peatlands. Another key part of our project was a series of workshops that we held across the UK, where we explored how peatlands are valued and captured these perspectives through counter mapping. So we took the term mapping quite broadly, so it included audio pieces, stories, podcasts, scenes, and they all counted towards this mapping approach. So we hosted 3 workshops across the UK. So you see here the workshop that we held in Scotland, which was part of the IUCN UK peatland conference that's held every year. And this year we did a workshop called Our Future is Peat in the Inch Marshes and Ruthven Barracks. So following an introduction to the history and archaeology of the site by Historic Environment Scotland, participants were handed out peatland-related questions that were written by Year 5 students at Wood Farm Primary School in Oxford, where one of the facilitators comes from. And then the participants explored different creative exercises for getting to know peatlands in ways that they may not normally do. So different kind of sensory ways of understanding peatlands using hydrophones or human hydrophones in this case. So getting really close and personal with the peatlands, understanding the texture of peatlands. And then the idea was that then at the end of the workshop, participants then were invited to answer these questions that the students had given them, and trying to trace, okay, what did this way of getting to know peatlands in different sensory experiences, how did that change the answers that were given? And then we created a zine out of this workshop, again called The Future is Peat. We held another workshop in Wales at Borthbog or Corfforchno in collaboration with Crib Compostio and Manon Orst. And there was also input from Elise Fowler and Natural Resources Wales. And this workshop, which was called Bog Down, unfolded in different stations along the boardwalk of the peatland. So participants would come to each of the stations and have a small talk or intervention or performance by one of the people I mentioned. So Manon, for example, gave a performance that's part of her ongoing work of getting to know and lessons from the peatlands. And Repeat then gave an audio performance, which is part of our moss pit work. And then people were, after visiting each of these stations, given prompt questions for reflection, which you can see in this microzine that we created as well. So this was the map from this particular project, and they could reflect on what they'd seen, heard, and experienced. The workshop in England was held at the Dorman Museum in Middlesbrough as part of a workshop series that was taking place in conjunction with an exhibition that was going on there called Our Place in the Family of Things, and with Climate Action Middlesbrough as well. So for the workshop, we wrote a short story, which was structured into 4 segments, interspersed with audio recordings from that were recorded on a hydrophone, so capturing the water sounds of peatlands. And the story was written to showcase the importance of water for peatlands and mix figures and a scientific way of expressing the importance of peatlands with kind of more poetic and sensory-driven evocative language. And so whilst we read the story, participants were then invited to draw and write their reflections on this large piece of paper that was laid out in the center of the room. And then that was this map that was created, was these ongoing reflections to the story. We also hosted a workshop in Canada, which was held in solidarity with the Save Our Sperrins campaign, which is against the development of gold mine in the Sperrin Mountains in Northern Ireland, proposed by the Canadian company Dalradian. So we held this workshop alongside the anarchists and the museum enclosure. And the idea was then to try and close this gap between a geographical gap between Canada and Ireland in this case, in terms of this gold mine and in terms of protecting and acting for the bog. So the participants created these postcards that were then acting in solidarity and sharing different messages with the campaign. And then we shared this on the day of resistance in 2025 of the Save Our Sperrins campaign. So in terms of the impact of the project, I just wanted to share some reflections and learnings. So we found that people responded really well to the workshops, especially when they were given alongside other partners and collaborators. And overall, we find this as a fantastic format for Repeat as a chance to dive more deeply into these topics and to do different types of experiences that facilitate that. And we often found that people share really how much it changes when they go so deeply into peatlands like this, changes their mindset or changes the way that they're valuing peatlands in this case. The postcards of solidarity highlighted the importance of connection across struggles and how impactful it is to support each other through these, and really offered a way to shorten this distance that's often created by geography. So this kind of psychological distance that changes the way we value things based on how closely they are to us, that we tend to value those that are closer to us and those further away. And in this case, creating this solidarity campaign really shortened that. The people in Canada felt really connected to this landscape and to the proposal and to fighting against that proposal. So hands-on, interactive, playful activities and being in the field were all really important for people to first get the experience and connection with peatlands before moving on to the more theoretical side with these value frameworks, for example. And using creative formats, the comics, the zines, even these sensory activities were really effective in reaching audiences outside of traditional academic and policy spaces and expanding the conversation and drawing in new voices. So that's just a little bit about the project that we held as Repeat. And we're really grateful for the chance to do that. And it was a really fantastic experience. And it's really nice for me now to look back on it all, having created this presentation. So thank you very much.
So thank you, Bethany, for your inspiring presentation. Lots to take from, and it was really engaging one. So next we'll travel to Nepal with Dane Carlson and his team, who will discuss their experiences of co-creating climate adaptation plans with local communities. So Dane, the floor is yours. Please introduce yourself and then share with us your insights.
LRG apologises for losing Dane's own introduction to his presentation. We pick up full audio on his first slide.
These integrated settlements, which kind of satisfy very elite visions of development, and which have, in the case of Nepal, failed almost every time for a number of reasons. There's a lot more here, but basically one of the questions, that kind of lurks is, well, what does an alternative to this look like? And so this is the community in which the work has taken place. It's perched on a mountainside at about 3,000 meters above sea level, and it's been here in this location for about 800 years, established by a community of religious refugees from Tibet in deep history. But as I mentioned earlier, people in this community are undertaking retreat, some of which is uphill, some of which works in other ways. And this is partly because, or mostly because, every year during the monsoon, what has traditionally been a very dry place is turning increasingly wet. So these are the actual forms of these kind of accelerated flows of earth and water that are slowly burying this village in sediment. So these and what those movements look like is that increasingly extreme rains wash a lot of these really fine clay particles down from the high mountains into the riverbed, and the riverbed itself, this is what it looks like in the monsoon, has risen about 12 meters in the last 20 years. And so it's kind of slowly burying the village. Just a map to orient you a little bit more. And this is only the lower part of the village, it's not the whole thing. But basically, this kind of central cluster is the original cluster of the village, and it's the sediment, the level of sediment has just kind of reached the bottom of that, and the next floods will start to actually bury people's homes. So loss of fields is a pressing issue, but more pressing is the loss of homes, and the village core is kind of the social cultural heart of the community. So one of the fundamental ideas, and this emerged from some previous work, but was really fundamental in structuring the design work that we did. Mostly that Sonam and Yundung did in the community itself, was that the village is already undertaking the ongoing design of itself. So one of the problems with institutional adaptation programming is that it tends to, and this is borne out in a lot of the adaptation literature, it tends to interrupt, make invisible, or prevent possible future forms of autonomous adaptation. And so we begin with this understanding that adaptation is already ongoing through retreat, and which means that our work has to fit into it somehow rather than kind of replacing or damaging it. So what is ongoing? There are some things that I can share and some things that I'm not going to share on purpose. Um, so again, this ongoingness, some of this comes from previous research, but we did spend a lot of time, Yundung and Sonam spent a lot of time kind of building a collective knowledge base of how people are already working to adapt and retreating in various forms. And so one of the things that we've come to understand is that this retreat is ongoing across time, space, and networks of social relations. It's not just kind of a thing that's embedded in daily labor. And one of the examples that I'll share quickly is that the layered temporalities of retreat are evident everywhere. And so these are some images of the kind of the results of daily labor used to reconfigure the material interface between the river and fields. Some of these apple trees have been partially buried by sediment, and some of the sediment has been dug up to create these walls. At the same time, orchards are being planted in previously abandoned fields, which will be cultivated in 6 to 8 years. And people are planning for home building uphill to last a generation, right? So there's this kind of work across time that's ongoing. And so, again, the question is, how do we work to make space for the continuing emergence of that ongoing making? And I'm moving a little too slowly, but one of the things that we're trying to be really cognizant of is understanding what design is. So rather than approaching design, I come from the discipline of landscape architecture, Sonam as a trained architect. But we're trying to understand design as something that kind of emerges in the making. And this book I draw from here, Sustaining and Maintaining Life Understood as Action, Work, Daily Struggle. And so that's how we're kind of approaching design. And so rather than saying we are going to show up and be the designers, what we've tried to frame this as is figuring out how understanding that what is on the top is already ongoing, and what is on the bottom here, the definition on the bottom, Escobar's autonomous design, is kind of what our role can be, which is to provide resources to allow the community to continue being what they are, essentially. And so this is kind of a big text blob, but basically the way that we approach this in more specific terms was through two sessions, co-design sessions in the village, one in fall of 2024, one in fall of 2025, to kind of answer some questions specific to these ideas. So we were framing this largely as the idea of through autonomous design, how to allow the community to continue making itself. Two of the initial ideas that structured these sessions was critical co-design toward kind of anticipatory infrastructure. So as people think about moving uphill, what will that look like, and how can that be planned for rather than kind of being something that happens and creates land conflicts and things like that over time, which is a very real possibility. And number two actually was something that I thought would be relevant and turned out to be everything to everyone in the community to be more or less irrelevant because they knew the power relations that were relevant here, which was for them to have the resources and the time to do the work they needed. And so I won't talk about the process too much, but there's some of these things I mentioned earlier. One of the things that we wanted to orient toward was accounting for need and desire, because need is kind of the baseline of development, and so we wanted to move beyond that to desire, and that's something that comes from like critical design studies, and also to understand this work as continuing a collective process of knowledge building and design. So in the first session, basically the work was to outline possible futures through scenario planning, understanding what desired futures looked like, which focused largely on having reliable infrastructure like water and pathways and things like that. And understanding what a future to avoid looked like, which is in many facets the loss of identity of this tradition, quote unquote traditional settlement. And so we also spent a lot of time, Solomon and Jung spent a lot of time understanding in more depth and paying attention to existing adaptation, in particular, how short and long-term planning are both ongoing and how to situate our work within that. And just the background here, this is a series of images that shows from a video that was shared um, basically how increasing amounts of rainfall are kind of shifting the ways that the landscape behaves. In particular, there's an increasing risk of rockfall from a upslope. And so people are kind of dealing with this on a day-to-day basis during the monsoon. And co-design session two, which happened a year later, one thing I should add is that these sessions were really dramatically delayed for a number of reasons. And I should thank both Sarah and Merhem for their extreme patience. Anyway, so the second session was basically revisiting a lot of the major themes that emerged during the first session, in particular addressing the necessities of long-term planning revolving around water. There's a lot of water here now, or relatively speaking, there's a lot of water. So how does the village, as it continues to shift, address issues related to stormwater, irrigation, wastewater, drainage that kind of layer onto this existing planning and design work? And another important issue is understanding plots and planning for building. So has been a community desire to basically distribute land and shift uphill. And so we tried to understanding some of the limitations that had come along with that process, thicken it a little bit. And this is some of the land on the right. You can see that is kind of undergoing this ongoing shift. And it's at a slope of somewhere between 25 and 28%. So extremely steep. So the focus of some of this design work, and I'm only going to show this image because the rest has not been shared with the community and hasn't undertaken kind of further edits, and so I don't want to, that this is considered to be their property, so I don't want to share it beyond this. But basically, what we did was understand this idea of dividing land for the possible construction of new homes as kind of a beginning for design work, and especially a way to begin to address other issues that were really pressing that had been brought up and considered in the design process, which was, for instance, what do we do with all the cut and fill? People realized there wasn't enough land for animal sheds in the plots that were designed, so how do we include that? How do we manage stormwater, right? Which is kind of a new question here in a lot of ways. What about household wastewater? How do we deal with that? So basically, this is kind of a beginning. So on the top left is essentially what this distribution process had looked like so far, which was a 15 by 15 meter plot. And our larger proposal was as about as simple as it can be, which is to frame, come up with an alternative measurement for how much space would be needed to include all these really important elements. And then we just came up with some kind of draft layouts on the right that basically show if we were going to understand all these things through a much more systematic approach. One of the limitations here, I guess I should add, is that because of the shifting labor dynamics here, any home building that would happen has to happen basically funded and planned by individual families. And so one of the things that, the discussions that's emerging is if every family moves on their own, then a lot of land conflicts and infrastructure conflicts could emerge as these kinds of individual projects layer on top of one another. So, one of the ways we were trying to reframe this is saying, well, home building leads to, the creation of cut and fill. So that could lead, basically provides material for terracing, which is a very well established practice here, which then, the terracing could act as kind of a collective landscape network, essentially. Um, so basically, again, this is just a portion of this work, but our design response was really to not introduce anything novel, or to say that we had, the role of, or that we were taking up the role of design in the sense that we would come and present a new vision, but rather fitting within and providing kind of slight, technical responses to adjust the work that had already been ongoing, and fitting within, as I mentioned earlier, these ongoing processes of retreat that kind of already stretch across space, time, and relational networks. And I will leave it at that. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Dean. Wow. I truly like the questioning of our role as designers, and I can feel your urge to hold yourself back as a designer to design. So thank you for taking through this. We'll definitely get back to it through our discussions. And last but not least, from Asia to Africa, we will journey to Morocco with Tracy Valcourt and her team to explore community interactions with water in the Moroccan desert landscape. So another exciting project indeed. And Tracy had lots of challenges. So Tracy, please, the floor is yours. First, just introduce yourself and then take us through.
Hi. Yeah, thanks for the invite, and it's really fun to have the showcase and to meet you all in person. And I just have to say, for anybody who is considering applying for the research grant, it was just you all were such a nice group of people to work with, and it really felt like collaboration should feel. And it was interesting to hear Dane also comment about how sometimes things don't roll according to schedule. And I think that's maybe the nature of landscape research, right? You don't really know the things you're going to encounter. And so again, I really am grateful for the patience that you all showed me. And that also, just to say that the funds that I was given for the project helped members of the community around Zagora in ways that I couldn't imagine when designing the project. So, for instance, when I was interviewing the Bedouins around Idir's farm, there was a little boy who had an abscess tooth, and it felt good to be able to kind of give in that way. It wasn't like, okay, I'm just going to go and extract some data, or to like really kind of get very close to the community. And I think when you're researching this level of problems too, you do become very deeply invested and just like enormously impressed with the kind of ingenuity and resilience that are expressed by the people in this region. And as my collaborator Idir Yachu, who is here pictured, he explained to me how important it is to build community when you're living in a landscape that is that can be so hostile. You need to be able to work together, which maybe I think is something we forget in places like North America. And so I learned a lot here. So yeah, Idir is not with me today just because of most of connectivity issues. Like where he's located at the farm, there is Wi-Fi signal, but it's often quite weak. So I have left his some contact information for him as well. And I guess I forgot to introduce myself. I'm a part-time professor at Concordia University here in Montreal, where I'm speaking from today. And I'm also a recent postdoc fellow at York University, thanks to the Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council of the government in Canada. So yeah, I'm gonna try and get through a very complex situation in a brief amount of time. And let's see. Okay. So just to set up a bit of context for like, geographically, the region that my study took place in was in the middle Draw Valley, and more specifically, where Idir's farm is located is the Fahija Plain. So you can see in the first map kind of where it is relative in Morocco. So it's in the southeast. Idir actually took me into the
Tracy,
we're
Tracy,
not far from
sorry
the
to interrupt.
Sahara.
Hello.
Yeah.
We don't see you present. We are seeing your presenter view.
Oh,
So
okay.
I'd like to change the view. It's okay, we can see, but
How like I don't know how to let's see here. Hang on.
I think from the three dots, just below the main
Oh
slide.
yeah. Okay, here we go.
Yes.
Use slideshow, is that it?
Yes, all good.
Okay,
Thank you.
thanks.
Sorry.
No problem. So yeah, so where Idir also brought me into the Sahara because Zagora is not very far from Mohammed, which is kind of it's one of the last oases that you can see. It's a chain. This region is a chain of oases, and Zagora and where Idir's farm is kind of an annex of or close to the Ternate oasis. Um, but we're so close to the border of Algeria in certain places Idir would point out that like certain sand dunes kind of marked the distinction between Morocco and Algeria. So you can see in the map to the right here where the Fahija Plain is in relation to Zagora. Okay. So to set some context, why there is water scarcity, particularly in the southeast, is it's a kind of confluence of events. Morocco, as of last year, was declared no longer in official drought after going on 7 years. This distinction of being now not in drought is a little bit negligible because I just spoke with Idir yesterday, and he says what's happening is in the north of Morocco, they're getting lots of rain right now, but in the south, where he is, the southeast, it's maybe even less than normal, and already they were suffering. So there's a kind of disparity going on there of the rainfall. And then something that had a major impact on that region is the construction of the El Mansour Dam in 1972 in Ouarzazate, which is just kind of upriver from where Zagorda is. And as we saw, there was that chain of oases. So what happened was when this dam was constructed, the oases that were nearer to the dam benefited more. And as you went farther away, less water arrived, and often the water that was arriving was polluted. So this again, and when there becomes issues around water, those issues also spawn into political and social issues. And when that, and there was a kind of domino effect where because the dam and the distribution schedule was not equally serving the oases, which were really important for the agriculture of the region, that 70% of that population of that region depends on kind of small scale agriculture. Farmers began digging more wells. And so when that also starts to affect the aquifer supplies. So it's a very, very complex situation where I think there's that adage of like, whenever you design a solution for one problem, you create another. And this was definitely applied to this particular situation. And then the Agdez Dam was built in 2023 to try to rectify the fact that in these more southern regions, farther away from the El Mansour Dam, so that this dam would provide drinking water and hydroelectricity for Zagora, Agdez, and Tamgrut, which has helped somewhat, but it's really not enough. And when you visit Morocco right now, you can see the oases are still beautiful, but they are beautiful in this kind of sublime way of this kind of mixture of brown and green, where they used to be these these very lush green areas, wetlands. It's very clear that these biomes are suffering. So I kind of touched on the points here about the kind of confluence of events. So as this water shortage takes place with the drought and the dams, this has an effect on the population of nomads. And this region was once very plentiful. Many Amazigh nomads lived there, and they subsisted on raising goats and sheep in the oases, and small scale agriculture of dates. And according to a 2014 census, there was a 60% decrease in nomads. And interestingly enough, when I was working at a university in Morocco, Akhawan, it was a census year. And so I was very interested to see what the numbers were coming out of that census. And I could not find this information. And I had local researchers look into that census as well, and they could not find this information. And I find this very troubling, to be honest, that this is not even captured when Amazigh culture is a very major aspect of Morocco. So another paradigm that I don't get very deeply into in the research that I did into this particular project, but something that is going to be increasingly a problem, and something that I saw unfolding while I was there that caused me great distress, is that there is what is being called a data center boom happening in Morocco. And because Morocco is very interesting in the sense of its proximity to Europe. And so, as probably many of you here know, data centers are enormously water hungry and energy hungry structures. And they are also a massive cause for pollution. And we see, for example, in the United States, only for example, that where the centers are established go according to a kind of racialized logic where we often see, for example, in Virginia, these huge data centers are put in largely Black communities, and so that the civilians around there are bearing the burden of, well, water supply problems, energy problems, and illness. And it was really alarming to me to see that there was no pushback at all um, against these things. And that, in fact, I gave a lecture at the university about this, and very few people were aware that these were very water intensive projects. And so I do really worry that already what this is going to mean to a country that's already very stressed for water. And so, as this, I just took one extract from one of these articles, but there is acknowledgement that there's an issue in the power and water availability, but you see international investors lining up, right? So you have like, in particular, United States and South Korea are right now in the works of building very large data centers there. Okay, so this is Idir's farm, and I'll just kind of go over aspects of what he's done and the kind of strategies he's using to contend with the water shortage. When I first set out to do the project, my intention was to interview the nomads that would frequent the well that he built. And when he built this well, it was for that intention that it would be a supply to irrigate his farm, but also that it would be used by the nomads as they passed through his area. And so not only was it a source of water, but he planted, and I will show you in upcoming slides, but he planted arugula, and often this grows wild in that region, and other plants that the herds could graze on. And what he's realizing now is that the one well is not sufficient to supply water for his farm and to serve the nomads. And so he is right now trying to raise funds to build a second well. But Idir was given this land through because he is a member of a tribe, the Musfa tribe. These are all tribal lands. And so in order to claim this piece of land that he was given in the year 2000, he had to plant something. So what he did was he planted these 2 olive trees that you see that are kind of bordering the door here. Those were there before anything else, and then everything kind of got built around that. And so this is from inside that structure that you saw from the exterior. And so you can see that there's a kind of all around the landscape is really impressive around there because you're kind of bordered by mountains on 2 sides of it, and then to the south is moving towards the Sahara. So this is from just the exterior of this courtyard. So the men above here are working on another structure, which Idir referred to as Le Chateau. What his intentions are is that he would like to have a kind of agricultural tourism agency where he would bring people to his farm and show them, like indigenous practices of agriculture, and feed them meals and do a tour of the land. So this is a picture that Idir sent me when the well was first dug this is in 2019. It cost him approximately 7,000 American dollars, which is a lot of money for people in that region. That was the second attempt. In 2017, he had a diviner come to try and find water, and they were unsuccessful. in 2019, he had another diviner come, and they were successful. And right now, he's in the works to bring somebody who is apparently an exceptional water diviner that comes, with a stick and does and seeks out water. And he's hoping to do that, in the next few weeks. And then, so this is examples of the plants that are growing around the well. Arugula, for example, and Idir actually showed me by like pulling a fistful of arugula, if you squeeze it, you will actually get water running out of it. So he says like the dromedaries and goats can, if there's absolutely no water, can get enough water out of these kinds of plants to survive. And then these are some of the huts that are built. He has two Bedouin neighbors that live just at the border of his property. And these are their sleeping huts. And then there was another hut that they used for cooking. And so Badi, who is the husband, and Barka, the wife, they've been living this kind of Bedouin lifestyle, were previously nomads. Badi was born in the desert like Idir. And, now their children or grandchildren are living in Zagorda, which is another thing has happened, that where people are migrating to cities, to varying success rates in adapting to that lifestyle. And so these are some different, you can see the watermelons after a harvest. The region was really well known for watermelon cultivation because it could get a jump on the markets in Europe, but because watermelon is a very water intensive crop, many farmers are moving away from that, and that has been on the enforcement of the government. So this year, Idir planted very few watermelons, and the year before that, his watermelon crop was completely destroyed by a freak hailstorm that caused just enormous damage to many of the farmers in that region. And this is the kind of balance that people contend with on an annual basis of like your crop, something that you depend on for your annual income can be obliterated in the matter of 30 minutes, for example. And so the other plant is a kind of wild cumin that Idir says is used medicinally for digestive issues, but is also known to decrease blood pressure, and is used in teas and in cooking. These are kind of traditional Amazigh cooking techniques and plants, herb use. And then this is the kind of rudimentary irrigation system that is very typical. I saw this kind of irrigation system also used. I have a friend who has a farm near Rabat using the same kind of system. So it's just these kinds of, these like inner tubes set up with holes in them. And, when you look down to the vanishing point there, that's Zagorda would be right before the foot of those mountains. And you can see Idir's farm just to the right. And then, again, I to kind of echo Bethany's, where her project, where her group was working to show that like peats are not these kinds of wastelands. I think there is this idea as well about deserts being these kinds of empty wastelands where, empty of people, empty of plants and animals. but you saw just like really impressive demonstrations of adaptability in the plant life and the animal and the people, which is was very impressive. Um, and this was what we saw. We were going into the Sahara from Mohammed, and we're going to a region called Erg Shigaga, which is where you have these kind of enormous called seas of dunes. And this is again arugula, and Idir told me that he had never seen the desert in bloom like we witnessed here. And this was because there had been this enormous downpour of water, which caused flooding and caused enormous damage. But this was the after effect of it. And then, so the nomads that we met along the way, the first thing any of them would say was that they would give thanks, for the rain. This was always the first thing people would say was just an expression of gratitude. And so these are some of the other kinds of landscapes that you would see. And again, you see, a lot of green appearing in these landscapes. And this is Idir's, what they call le jardin, which is their backyard in Zagorda. And the well is also, there's another well here that is also very vital to supporting the palm grove that they have growing here. And when I was there at another point, there was actually workers that had been sent down into the well to dredge it deeper because that well had run dry. All over Morocco, I was speaking with friends who were encountering the same issue. And then this is the alleyway that leads to their house and divides, where you can see with the light coming in. If you turn in that direction, you find this garden. And the kind of connection that Idir has with the land is, I think, really just kind of dictates all of his kind of thinking around how to contend with the water shortage, because he told me that the palm grove is important to him and his family, traditionally speaking, but also that people get so much pleasure
I'm
walking these
afraid,
alleys.
Tracy, sorry to interrupt, but
Yeah.
I'm afraid we are going
Okay, sorry.
over.
Okay, sorry. You cut me off. Okay, you have to do this kind of thing because I get caught up. Okay, so anyways, there's the final Idir making us a meal, and the workers were sharing that meal. Thank you. Sorry about that.
It's okay. Thank you, Tracy, for all your enthusiasm and genuine work you brought us today. Thanks a lot. So now for the discussions, if anyone of the audience would like to have or have a question for our guest today, please unmute yourself or write your question in the chat box. And till then, maybe I can start with a question. I actually have many questions for the three of you myself. But what I can see common between the three projects of you, because of course you're responding to this theme of people and climate, I can see that the three of you used a wide range of co-creation and collaboration methods and tools to actually breach your data to understand more about how different communities respond to climate changes. And I have two questions in this regard regarding communication with communities on different areas. So, for example, Bethany was talking about how would they define peatlands to people to actually get more information about them, and also so communicating maybe jargons or scientific concepts to communities, how to deal with that. Also, Dane talking about design techniques and actually communicating to communities who know more about the land than ourselves, outsider researchers, but also how to make them deal with their new realities that they are not used to, building with different techniques and so on. And also Tracy about, talking to them about balancing pressing current needs, daily life needs, and the future realities. How would we communicate this to communities? And from your experience, what was your how to do it, your success, your failures, advice for other researchers? So I would be grateful if you can share with us your insights.
Yeah, I can start then.
Yeah,
I think actually like what we found throughout like this project and more widely with Repeat since we've been going is actually everyone has a story somehow to do with peatlands. Kind of maybe like, well, especially living in places like the Netherlands or the UK where we work a lot. But across the world, right, that wetlands are so ubiquitous that people have these connections with them and associations with them. Sometimes they're positive, sometimes they're negative, but everyone has something in our experience. So I think a lot of times it's actually creating the conditions where people then remember them or kind of end up in a new one that maybe reformulates it or talks to someone else, not necessarily ourselves as an organization, but someone else, and then they kind of go down a tangent or something like this. So I think in a way, it's not necessarily then very top down in terms of this is what they are and they're all these wonderful ecosystems and you should recognize that and all of these kind of things, but much more like, okay, let's get together and see in which way wetlands more broadly maybe have had an impact on your life and what is your experience with them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's insightful. Thank you, Bethany. Yeah, Dane.
Yeah, I think I one of the things I really struggle a lot with is the word community, and I sometimes I use it when I'm talking about this work just because I don't really have the time or the bandwidth in that context to unpack it enough. But especially like in the village I was talking about, there are a lot of people whose families have been there for 8 centuries, right? And so they know the land, or at least what the land used to be or used to look like. And so to show up and say, I'm going to communicate with you about what I know is a really problematic concept for a number of reasons. And so I think a central notion in what we have been trying to do, we've gotten 2 small grants over the last 4 years, which has totaled like $10,000 or something. So not a lot, but is to build extended engagement. I mean, Sonam has probably been to the village 4 or 5 times, maybe 6 or 7 at this point. Yundung actually, Sonam is still here. Yundung left the chat, but it's his natal village. So his family has been there for many years. And so part of it just emerges from like having a or working together with people, collaborating with people who have the embodied experience of the landscape. And so we positioned and designed this whole process to engage with people as part of a collective rather than having a very clear hierarchy between designer and non-designer. And so, I mean, Sonam can speak to this if he wants to, but he's not from the village, but he's from a similar kind of high Himalayan context and grew up in a very similar landscape in a number of ways. And so, I think the idea of communicating with people, it's more like showing up and this is something a lot of other people talk about outside of landscape too, is just being there for a long enough time to understand the complexities of what's going on, to show your willingness to have an extended engagement with place, to build relationships, just as Tracy has done too. And then to have enough context to say, where can I fit? And can I fit? And if I can't, then I'll leave. That's my best answer to the question.
Tracy, would you like to add
Yeah,
to
I relate really deeply with that response. And something I feel like I struggled with a lot I mean, I continue with it is like how to directly help people. Like there was this, I learned everything from these, I feel like I did not like my background was like landscape from an art historical perspective. So I don't come from a kind of technical background, but I'm kind of at the intersection of surveillance studies and art history. And so I kind of have that technical, I know like that kind of critical landscape of how technology is encroaching and threatening landscape. So I kind of have that background information. But my struggle right now is like, how do I directly help these people? Like, Idir needs another well. How do I help? And I can see the constraints that these people have to raise resources to do these kinds of things and taking a loan out to do one thing and then something else comes along and then so I think that this is something that like Idir says that the community became very interested in me in what I was like the locals around in what we were doing. There was like some intrigue there of what and um yeah, so I think that I know that this was not directly part of that question is like how really how to kind of really bring some kind of tangible aid to people um to help them apply their strategies, right? And
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I get you. Well, your research was really, I don't know, insightful in many ways that I have loads of questions in my mind, but one track for it, I can see the insider-outsider relationship, and usually this is something that we struggle with as researchers coming from other backgrounds or cultures and doing research in other contexts. How are we seen by the community? How to integrate? And I think the three of you more or less experience this. So I think this is one of the things, but also building on Tracy, you know, struggles, which I also know. And I think it's related to also activist ethnography, and how to actually use our research to do something. And this will bring me to, I would love to hear your thoughts on sharing research outputs with communities and collaborators in the field, because I know that usually we go to the field and we do these collaborative efforts with the communities, but then we get back, we write our papers, research papers, or maybe Lex piece or something, but then it's usually hard in time and effort, I would say, to go back to the communities and actually share the results of the data they helped us to collect. So, how do you deal with it from your experience or struggles? You don't have to be dealing with it actually, but it's a question that I have, and I think your work also brings it to me back. How do we go back and share with them?
A project that Idira and I have in mind is that I would really love, and I've discussed a little bit with you, this idea of
Yeah.
like going and collecting oral histories like from the nomads in the region and like making a book out of that, right? That is also like archiving not only their stories, but the landscape itself, which is changing, right? And then I'm thinking, is there some way that this can be kind of monetized towards like helping that, but also not doing it in an extractive way?
Yeah.
This idea of like taking people's stories
Yeah.
or taking people's misery and struggles and like somehow like I think a lot about like how to use this in that it would go directly back to these people. And it's yeah, I don't know. This is what I think a lot about, and I think that there should be more. I wish there was like more money for these people and less money for war. For example, just for example, right?
Okay.
I
Yeah,
I
thank
can give sort of an indirect answer, or maybe an answer to what I interpret as the question. And I think Sonam would have something to add to this, so if you want to jump in. So one of the things that emerged during the process was that even though we were for a number of reasons, trying to center landscape questions, a lot of building related questions came up. And so one of those in particular was kind of the ability of people's roofs, which have been, traditionally built out of mud, because it doesn't rain that much and they're flat roofs, right? To withstand rain. And people, I mean, the roofs are like, there are some places where, especially in houses that haven't been lived in for a while, or aren't maintained as well, it's like the house is literally just like eroding back into the ground. And you can see it, and the walls are dripping, right? And so that came up, especially in the context of the monastery in the village, and it's important for a number of reasons. It's the only settlement in the region that's known as a Bon settlement, which it's not Tibetan Buddhist. It's a slightly different practice. Anyway, and so one of the things that people were asking about is how do we fix the roof? How do we redesign roofs in order to respond to this? And so one of the things that we've been working on, which has like nothing to do with my disciplinary background, are, in applications for redesigning and repairing the monastery roof, which again, I don't know anything about that. Um, but I know enough that I can write a grant. And so I think there's this, the idea that we have to be open to the kind of well, there's a book Ron Wackery wrote, I forget the name, but he talks about nomadic practice and essentially allowing the practice to lead you in a direction. And so that to me is an example of that, right? Thinking about what the future of the monastery building is, which is of course inevitably tied to landscape in a lot of ways. But that's my response. I don't know. And if Sonam, if you have anything to add.
Yeah. I just to add on what Dane just mentioned about the, like what you are, what you have one purpose going there in the community, and then it start unfolding to some many other directions. So that's what I think Dane just mentioned. And regarding the first, okay, sorry. Yeah. So hi. So yeah, regarding the first question, I think first question, I also like to add one
Sure.
thing,
Please do.
which is quite interesting because I think, like you can see like how many layers of people trying to understand particular, locations such as our project. Dane is far away from Nepal. Of course, he has been here and he has got some exposure, and I myself is not from there. And I'm also a kind of an outsider, but not really outsider. And then we have a colleague who is from the village, but he is also, he's born there, he grew up there, but he studied in India, and then he's going, he got back to the community, and he has a different perspective of understanding of his village. So one thing throughout the project, what I felt really fascinating is like, how can we transcend these different layers of understanding and perception? And and then, going to the community, and even before going to the community, how we prepare ourselves, because even though we are saying that we are going to facilitate the workshop, but still, how do we, like co-create or co-design the agendas, and what are the priorities, so those are also, not easy, but also challenging. And so it has been a quite good, learning time, even for me. And yeah, so it's, I think the best thing for me is like we were able to build a relationship with the villagers, and then, which takes a lot of time and a lot of engagement, and that also, gives us a lot of directions that sometimes we are thinking a lot in terms of theory basis, and But then in reality, people are struggling with some, like issue that you are totally unaware of. So we are, also, learn to be working on that. So yeah. But yeah, again, so thank you so much for this opportunity. So it was really great collaborating with Dane. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Sunam. Yeah, I think we all resonate with what you're saying, and we are all learning and relearning about everything, and especially about what we read in books. I feel that, yeah. And maybe I had lots of questions, but for the time being, maybe I would end with one more positive question. What was the most rewarding or enjoyable thing of conducting this research? So just think happy thoughts of what you encountered during this year.
But I can start.
Yeah, please do.
Um, well, I think just I don't know, I felt like an enormous privilege to be invited into like invited to into homes and to sit with families and to to be like taken in and and to be brought into landscapes with people who know it so intimately and I just learned so many things that I think I've taken home with myself about like what to be grateful for and how you kind of approach
Mhm.
life that I feel like I learned I'm just enormously grateful to well just to have to all that made it possible but and the people who
Yeah,
I worked with. Yeah.
definitely. Dane, Bethany, Sunam, yeah.
Yeah, I think maybe continuing to understand, excuse me, the necessity of and maybe possibilities for open-endedness in design practice. Yeah. And one of the things that makes that possible, obviously there's a lot of privilege that comes along with it, but one of the things that makes that possible are funding organizations that allow you to figure it out as you go to some degree. So,
Mm.
thank you.
Bethany, I think you had lots of enjoyable aspects from my side, but I would like
Yeah.
to hear from you.
Yeah, I think it was indeed. I think mostly it's kind of coming back to this being with people in the peatlands and kind of playing and experimenting and just the power and joy I think that these ecosystems have and what they have to offer us as we try and move towards transformation of our societies and things. I really find that peatlands have such a lot that they can teach us with and guide us and a lot of inspiration and things like this. So it's really nice to be with people having that shared experience and connection. So
Well, thank you. Sunam, if you'd like to, but I don't want to add pressure, but if you'd like to add, we are here for you.
Yeah, no, I mean, I really enjoyed collaborating. I think the collaboration has real power to bring a change. And so especially, thanks to Dane, who is there with some skills, and we are here with some different comparative advantages. And then the Yungdong, who is in the field, in the village. So, like, otherwise, one, like single effort from only one person, that would be like extremely difficult. So I think the collaboration is very important. It has a power. And in itself, our process in itself is also a co-design, in my point of view. So that's, I enjoyed a lot working, across and from the different discipline, from different cultural context.
Thank
Yeah.
you, Sunam. Well, thank you all. I think it's amazing that you all mentioned people, and it's reflecting the theme of that call of 2024 about people and climate. So I think we are all in a good position, reflecting what we are really all interested in. Again, thank you all. I have one question from the chat box regarding our funds from Rachel Bacon. She's asking what makes a strong proposal and what is reasonable to apply for budget-wise, and if it's always 3 grants given. So what makes a strong proposal is mainly we have our criteria announced in the research goal, but mainly linkages to our goals in LRG, to the theme of the current year that you will be applying for, and how are you going to do it? So your methodology is also important, taking into consideration your time frame and your budget frame. Budget-wise, you have a maximum of £5,000. So you have from 0 to 5,000. You are the one who can decide. Also, it has to be justifiable. If it's only 3 grants, no, it depends on what we get and the strength of the proposals, because we have a cap from our side. So it depends how what we get and who gets it. So for example, actually for 2024, we had 4 recipients, but one asked for another extension. So that's why they are not with us today. 2025, we had 5 recipients because it depends on how much they requested from us. So our cap fit 5 projects, and also for 2023, our cap only fit 3 projects. So it kindly depends mainly on what we receive. Yeah, sure. We can connect you all together, and we'll be in touch around this, because we have our proposal for writing maybe reflective essays, 4 of us, on your project. So we will be in contact, Tracy. For sure, we'd love to keep it. Okay, so that's all from our side today. We don't have any more questions, and I would like to thank you all for your generous sharing with us today, your spirit, and all your efforts throughout the year, and getting through the research. I know you have faced lots and lots of challenges, the 3 of you, and I'm really proud that you're all here today sharing your results. And yeah, we will all keep in touch. And if anyone would like to have any questions, please do not hesitate to send us through our emails on our website, either me or Sarah or any one of the trustees. We are all here to help you and guide you through. So thank you, and we apologize for the time spillover, but it was really a great session. So we thank you. Anna, you have a question? I can see a hand raise.
Yes, hello, sorry. Thank you very much for amazing presentations. That was really inspiring.
Thank you.
I have a question about the time frame, because on your website, I think there's a mistake there. There's a time frame for the completion of the project. Is it a 1 year?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I shall have to go back and look at the website now. Sorry, Anna.
No, that was and again, thank you very much for organizing it. That was great.
You're welcome. It's our pleasure you enjoyed, and we enjoyed all your presence today, really. So thank you, and see you soon, all in our next event. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.